Hey guys, it's Kai. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about gender. Shocking, I know. But I wanted to talk about why I thought I was non-binary before I finally came to the revelation that I am a binary trans man. Because it's a doozy. I've only ever really talked about this in bits and pieces, and I think that it might be able to help somebody else, and I just think it's good for explanation reasons, keeping y'all in the loop and kind of my thought process with everything. Either way, it's an interesting story, so that's why I'm here. I don't know what to do with my hair anymore, so if I'm playing with it the entire video, I'm really sorry. I'm having a hair crisis. I don't know if I want to part it this way, ew, no, or this way. That's emo. Or to the front, it's a little too long for that, but that's what I like. Or to the side like I was, but I didn't do it that way last night, so it's not cooperating. See? Oh boy. If you have not been following me for very long, I used to identify as agender and then as a non-binary trans masculine person. Let's go back even further. We'll start at the beginning. We'll just go in chronological order. So obviously I used to think I was a cis girl. I spent pretty much all of my childhood hating myself and my body and not feeling like I fit in anywhere and not really understanding why or how to fix it or how to cope with it. When I was younger, I had pretty much never even heard of transgender as a concept. My only ever exposure to something like that was the trans woman that you see in the movies who goes on a business trip and cross-dresses in her hotel room. That was my literally only exposure to trans people my entire childhood. So I really didn't even know that it was a thing. I wouldn't say my family is conservative necessarily, but they are pretty religious, and we didn't really talk about gender and sexuality and anything like that. So as well as being unaware of all of these subjects, I also didn't feel like it was something I could talk about. The first moment I ever had an inkling I wasn't cisgender was when I binded with like a sports bra and a, what are those called? Bandeau for a photo shoot I did, a gender bend photo shoot. Like the light bulb, you know, turned on. And so I had texted a couple of my friends and I was like, hey, I don't think I'm cisgender. And I didn't really have a label for it for a long time. I went by genderqueer when it was like very new. Just, I know I'm not cis, but I don't know beyond that, like what's going on. And then I went as a demigirl because I still wanted to put myself in that mold of being a girl, but I knew I wasn't cisgender. After that one got entirely too uncomfortable, and I knew that I wasn't really feeling connected to being a girl in any sense of the term. I didn't really know what I was, and I went with agender. Now, I really did not have this definition right. Thought I was more gender neutral, and non-binary, just as a blanket term, probably would have been better for me to use. I went with agender because I felt like it was kind of right in the middle, even though it's not. It's like the absence of gender completely, and I obviously did not have absence of gender. I definitely had a very gendered feeling, enough so that I would call myself a boy or make little comments like, who is he? Or like, you know, things like that, and delete all comments that called me a girl. And a lot of people called me out about that and like, oh, well, why do you call yourself a boy if you're agender? Or why do you do this because you're agender? Not saying that you can't do those things if you're agender, but for me it definitely was a deeper thing. So I used agender as a label for a very long time, like a couple of years, and then I realized that that wasn't working again, and I was just like, okay, well, I know I'm transmasculine, but like there's no way I can be a binary trans guy, like, oh. So I was just using like non-binary trans masculine something or another. And then about 8-9 months ago, I finally came to terms with the fact that I am a binary trans guy, and here we are. So I want to go a little bit into depth about why it took me so long to get here and why I thought I was non-binary for such a long time. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it boils down to 3 different things. So we'll start with the first one, which I think honestly could best be described as some internalized transphobia. I was terrified to admit to myself that I was a guy, and I think I knew for a long time. Like I said, I would use boy for myself, or I would use masculine terms for myself while saying I was non-binary. Basically the entire time I was non-binary, I was questioning whether or not I was a binary trans man, but I don't think I wanted to admit that to myself. It was a very scary leap to make. I don't even really know why. I just had a lot of fear and guilt associated with it. I was afraid that I was gonna let everybody in my life down, and I was afraid that like nobody would accept me. I was really afraid that James was gonna feel like I tricked him. You know, like I started dating him when I still identified as a girl, and I felt guilty. Here's a girl, just kidding, you're gay now, you know? And I just felt horrible about that, and like I didn't want to spring that on anybody, I guess. And I also just like, I didn't want to be trans, which sounds fucked up now that I say it, but that's genuinely how I felt. I suppose I still sort of feel that way. Like, I definitely have my moments where I wish I wasn't trans. I wish that I was in a body that felt comfortable and didn't have to deal with all of these problems that come along with being trans. It would be much easier to be cis. I will say, like, I'm glad that it's made me into the person that I am, and I'm glad I've met the people I've met. I didn't want any of it, which is so I just didn't tell anybody, and I didn't even admit to myself that I was trans. I just knew that I definitely wasn't a girl, but I didn't want to let anybody down by being a guy or not meeting their expectations of who I am. And that probably took the longest time to get over than anything else, was just coming to terms with the fact that, you know, I still am who I am. Nothing I do or say is gonna change the fact that I am a guy, and if people don't accept that, then that's their problem and not mine. Like, it is not my responsibility to change who I am to please other people. If people can't accept me for who I actually am, then they don't need to be in my life. And I also just think it took meeting other trans people and talking to other trans people for me to realize that, like, it's okay. I think I spent a lot of my life seeing transphobia here and there, and just like getting some sort of idea that people hate trans people and being trans isn't okay. That's still super prevalent in society today, but that's something I had to move past to be able to admit to myself and to the world that this is who I am, and like, I can't change that, and I shouldn't have to apologize for it. It's okay to be trans. Number two factor that contributed to the non-binary debacle was pressure from other people. And being an internet personality, online presence, whatever, certainly was the majority of that. I definitely had pressure from other places as well, but a huge portion of it was from the internet. So when I came out and first started questioning my gender, I had everybody under the sun either supporting me and like, yeah, you're great, or people saying like, oh, you're actually cis, you're a trender, like whatever, or people being like, oh, you're actually a guy, like it's obvious, or people saying like, oh, non-binary isn't a thing that you can be. So I kind of let a lot of that dictate and confuse me for a long time. I know I was told a lot that if I wear makeup and I wear certain clothing, then I can't call myself a guy, or even people would say I couldn't call myself non-binary because I wore makeup. And a lot of that really got to my head when I was questioning whether or not I was a trans man. I do like to wear makeup from time to time. I definitely don't wear makeup like I used to, but today I'm wearing makeup, I'm wearing concealer, and I'm wearing eyebrow stuff. I still obviously am pre everything, and I'm still a trans guy. Like, again, I guess that's kind of internalized transphobia too. Like, trans men can't do X, Y, or Z, or they're not a guy. I had to come to terms with the fact that I can do these things and still be a guy. If cis guys do it, I can do it too, and it doesn't make me less valid as a guy. I spent a long time thinking like, oh, well, I don't have bottom dysphoria as bad as the next person over here, so I can't be a binary trans man. I have to be non-binary, even though I identify masculinely. Everyone is trans in their own way. Everybody experiences dysphoria differently. Everybody likes to present differently. At the end of the day, it just boils down to how you feel about your own gender. And that felt really good to know that I could be a guy and didn't have to give up these things I liked doing. Some of that pressure also came from people in my life, and I don't even think that they meant to do it. I'm gonna use James as an example. So he never outright said anything to me like, oh, you can't be a guy or I'll divorce you. But I had a lot of that guilt I just previously talked about, and I had this idea in my head that if I was a guy, he would no longer want to be with me. So I kind of buried all of that, all of those feelings about masculinity as deep as I could, and I was just like, ooh woo, I'm non-binary, like it's fine because I'm not a girl or a guy, like it's cool, when I was still really uncomfortable. That was just my own guilt and insecurity, and the biggest thing that helped me to come to terms with it and to feel okay coming out was him just saying like, hey, I have noticed that you like these pronouns, that you feel comfortable this way, and if you would like me to use them and you want to use a new name, and if you're a guy, like that's okay. It's okay to be who you are. And I was just like, oh great, like that's who I am then. Like, I've just been hiding it, I've just been burying it for a long time, so I just like word vomited it up. Again, it shouldn't matter what anybody else thinks. There's no list of guidelines you have to check off to be a trans guy. Do you identify that way? Do you have dysphoria? Great, you're a trans guy. Congratulations. And the third thing, and this is kind of hard to explain, so I'm gonna try to make you guys understand. Gender euphoria played a huge role in me not understanding my gender for a long time. I went from being so uncomfortable as a cis girl to finally changing that and knowing I'm not cis and feeling a huge sense of relief and kind of just riding off of that for a while until I couldn't anymore. Like I'd ride this wave of euphoria and then I'd come down and I'd be super uncomfortable again. So I'm like, maybe I'm not a demi-girl. I think I'm agender, or I think I'm gender neutral, or whatever. And then I would start doing things to affirm that gender, like changing my pronouns to they, them instead of she, they, and starting to buy men's clothing. And so I'd get this huge wave of euphoria just from changing those two things, not being called a girl anymore, wearing men's clothing, starting to be more androgynous. I got a huge like boost of like comfort from that, and I'd ride that wave and then I'd come back down again and I'd be super uncomfortable. This last like, oh, I'm trans masculine thing allowed me to try out several different things like he, him pronouns and my new name and buying all men's clothing, basically making that social transition and leading me to the realization of where I am now. And that's not to say I don't still feel like different waves of dysphoria and euphoria. I certainly do. When I hit the bottom of that wave, still feel comfortable identifying as a trans guy. Feeling that ease from the discomfort I was feeling made me believe that I was on the right track, which I was technically on the right track. I made the journey from over here, but I shouldn't have labeled myself so quickly. I should have just stayed with it longer and tested things out and then made declarations, but that's okay. That's how it goes sometimes. I am a huge supporter and advocate of it being okay to explore your identity and explore pronouns and names and whatever you want to do, whether it turns out you are trans or you're actually cis or you're somewhere in the middle. It's always okay to explore that and to test stuff out. Obviously don't make any like permanent decisions if you're not sure, but like having people test out your pronouns for you or having people test out names for you so you can find out what's comfortable. It's okay to do that, and it's okay to decide that that wasn't right for you or that it was. And I personally feel so grateful to finally be here because I have never felt so comfortable in my own skin and so okay with myself. I, like I said, have struggled my whole life with self-image and dysphoria, which I did not know was dysphoria at the time. I feel like I've spent my whole life hating who I am. It feels like words cannot describe how good it feels to be okay, if that makes sense. To be able to look at myself and to have people in my life use my name and use my pronouns and see me as me. Okay, before I get emotional, I'm gonna go, because I'm getting there. But I hope this helped explain something and give you guys a better idea of why I did the things I did. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye.